Hi everyone, Attorney Tim Zerillo here. I'm shooting this video from our offices in Portland, Maine on December 15th, 2020. And this video is about what happens and what you should do if you have formed a marijuana business with a partner or partners and now you need to get out of that business. Well, it gets messy and you're going to need a well-qualified lawyer. So don't substitute this video for legal advice, but hopefully to an introduction as to the way to think about these issues if you're going through a cannabusiness divorce. So you had an idea, maybe with a friend or two, that you were going to pursue a passion in the cannabis space. Perhaps you knew you'd be good at growing marijuana, building out a grow, working on extractions, etc. And you put your money, your love, your sweat into building out that grow. And guess what? You were successful. Terrific. You were on the right side of the industry at the right time. But now, when faced with breaking up with some of those partners you had, you look to the contracts that you signed at the outset, if you signed any. Perhaps you had a lawyer fill out a very simple limited liability company operating agreement that really doesn't call for what happens in the event of a dissolution or one partner leaving the company. Or perhaps you don't have any contract or business corporation at all. So it's terrific that you were a success, but now, how do you get your money out of that success? Or how do you get a partner out? Well, these are good questions and I can't answer them all in this video, but here are a couple of ideas. First of all, if this was an ordinary business selling hot dogs, you could theoretically sue in Maine's business court. And you could do this with a marijuana business, but we're not in the business of selling hot dogs, and hot dogs aren't illegal federally. So when I think about the challenges that we see on the regulatory side of our law practice, where businesses need help with legal, they need help with accounting, they need help with tax, it worries me, combined with the fact that the business itself is federally illegal, if there's going to be a lawsuit that's filed. Now, this is very important, partially just because when you think about what currently protects you as a medical marijuana caregiver or in the adult use space, it is just the laws of the state of Maine. Because I know there are acts like the MORE Act, which recently passed the House but is still stalled in the Senate, that may decriminalize, largely decriminalize marijuana at the federal level. In politics, who knows? And so right now what we have is marijuana still as a Schedule I controlled substance. And the only thing that prevents you or protects you federally, if you're a marijuana caregiver, is the Rohrabacher Blumeneaur amendment. Now, I won't go deeply into this, but this was a provision that has been passed many years to a spending bill, the federal spending bill, that essentially says that the feds are supposed to be hands-off in states where medical marijuana has been passed. That being said, we know in this state alone that has not always been the case, and there's a leading case in this part of the country that comes from the state of Maine. It's a case we currently have on appeal to the First Circuit Court of Appeals in Boston. It is a federal criminal action in which the court has said that the only way that a marijuana caregiver achieves the protections of Rohrabacher Blumeneaur is if they can establish, and they establish it, meaning they bear the burden of proving that they have 100% complied with every single aspect of all of the Office of Marijuana Policies, regulations, and all of the Maine statutes related to marijuana caregiving. And if they have done that throughout the entire history of their caregivership. So unless you can comply in that strict of a fashion, you don't really have any protections in the state of Maine unless the First Circuit Court of Appeals in the federal court in Boston reverses that opinion. Well, then what do? Well, what you do is you look before you leap. So the best advice is obviously at the outset, you begin with the end in mind. And that end may be that you and your partner or partners go on and you have a long and productive history and build your business and then sell it and fly off, exit with a golden parachute. Or it could be that you build the business and it's got assets and it's a success, but you just can't get along with your partners anymore. So at the outset, the best advice is to plan with robust partnership agreements or LLC agreements, with robust thought process about what happens if there's a dissolution or one partner decides to leave, and so on. But if you're watching this video and you didn't do that planning, or maybe you partially did that planning and your lawyer at the time didn't do as much planning as he or she could have, then there are still options. Very often what we do when we structure LLCs, let's say for marijuana cannabis businesses, is we put in mandatory arbitration and mediation clauses. Now, if you haven't done any planning at all, you can't force somebody into mediation or force them into arbitration. They can sue you in court, you can sue them in court, but that probably is not what you want. So what do you do then? Well, it doesn't mean that you can't have arbitration by agreement or mediation by agreement. So one of the things to do is to educate your partner or your partner's lawyer through your lawyer about what some of the soft spots are if either one of you files suit, especially federally. A lot of lawyers who do business work don't do any federal work at all. Now, I have a unique view on this because we do marijuana regulatory work at my firm, but I've also done federal criminal defense for many years. So I have a unique view on how the feds look at money laundering charges and how they look at tax evasion charges and how they look at marijuana as a controlled substance compared to firearms, etc. And those are all things to be concerned about and to consider very, very carefully. But there's no reason why in a partnership dispute that has not been planned at the outset that you can't come to a contract afterwards for the purpose of arbitration and mediation. Now, the arbitration process especially is not entirely confidential, but the reason I like it is it's just not as public as a suit. So if you can't settle the case at mediation, which is negotiation with a skilled mediator and your lawyers, you can consider the arbitration if you have to litigate, because at least that arbitration at the outset is done privately. And even though it is possible for someone to what they call confirm an arbitration award later on, it's often not done, and it's possible that you could go through the entire process, get what you want out of it, and never have a public record of it, or certainly at least not as obvious a public record as a lawsuit. You might say to me, well, we didn't do any planning at the outset of our business. Now we have this super successful business. We're making all sorts of money, but I need to get out of it. Am I out of luck then? Well, no, actually. In Maine, you have something called the Uniform Partnership Act, and that Uniform Partnership Act is where if there are no contracts between businesses, no formal separate entity, but you are carrying on that business with another person or persons, then you might fall under that Uniform Partnership Act, and it may provide you the protection you need. It calls for all sorts of different remedies for partners in a business, and it also allows for situations in which one partner has been acquiring businesses or real estate or what have you, equipment inventory on behalf of a business, maybe using business funds, and now claims that that new business or new real estate is actually not the existing partner's asset. And that's, that happens sometimes, especially when there are no defined parameters as to the partnership. And it also provides for duties of care and loyalty of partners between each other, so there are certainly avenues to pursue if in fact you don't have any structured and formal business entity like a limited liability company, an LLC, but you've been carrying on doing business with a partner. So thanks for watching. I know there is a whole lot to think about here if you're going through a mess of a partnership breakup, but hopefully this gives you a starting point. And of course, feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions, and have a terrific rest of 2020 and hopefully a terrific 2021. Thanks for watching.